In the depths of the universe, there was a being who was unlike anything else. His name was Valather, and he had lived for countless millennia, watching the stars burn and the planets fall. He had seen civilizations rise and crumble, felt the passage of time like the ebb and flow of a river. Yet, through it all, he remained unchanged. His power was unmatched, his immortality unchallenged. There was nothing in the cosmos that could harm him, nothing that could even make him feel the slightest discomfort. Valather was a force of nature, as constant as the sun, as cold as the stars themselves. But after so much time, he began to feel a strange emptiness. The worlds he had conquered, the people he had defeated, all of it felt like a never-ending cycle of boredom. He had learned everything there was to learn about power, strength, and victory, yet none of it brought him peace. The endless war and the silence of the cosmos had begun to weigh on his mind. He had seen the vastness of the universe and the fleeting nature of life, but none of it mattered. Everything, in the end, seemed so meaningless. It was this sense of emptiness that led him to make an unexpected decision. Valather's mind turned to one thing that had always intrigued him: love. He had seen it countless times throughout the universe, in the eyes of the weak and the strong, in the families of dying worlds, in the hearts of those who cared for each other. He had never understood it. Love was a force that seemed to defy logic, a force that had no place in the grand schemes of power and conquest. And yet it seemed to be something everyone wanted. People fought for it, sacrificed for it, and sometimes even died for it. But could love truly be powerful enough to change the course of the universe? Could love, something so fragile and fleeting, defeat him, the immortal being who had ruled for so long? Valather smiled to himself, a rare and unsettling expression for one who had lived so long without emotion. The idea amused him. He had conquered empires, shattered stars, and destroyed entire civilizations without breaking a sweat. What was this thing called love that so many spoke of? How could it possibly stand against someone like him? He decided to find the answer himself. He would test love, and he would test it on the most unlikely of beings: a human. Valather's gaze swept across the stars, his eyes scanning the countless planets that filled the galaxy. He knew that humans were an insignificant species, small and weak, barely a blip in the grand scale of the universe. But it was their capacity for love that intrigued him. Could they love so deeply that it would threaten his immortality? His search took him to Earth, a pale blue dot in the far reaches of the universe. The planet was simple, its people often fighting over small things, unaware of the greater forces at play in the cosmos. But it was here that Valather would find the answer to his question. He arrived in the quiet hours of the night, descending from the skies in a ship that glowed with a cold, silver light. From the ground, no one saw him land. The quiet town below remained oblivious to the arrival of the being who would challenge everything they knew. Valather stepped out of his ship, his figure towering over the small structures of the town. He felt the warmth of the earth beneath his feet, a warmth that seemed so alien to him after countless years in the cold vastness of space. The air smelled strange, fresh, alive, and full of things he had not experienced in a long time. There was something about this planet, something that made him feel alive. He had come for a single person. Through the vastness of space, he had found a young man named Kai. Kai was nothing special by most standards. He was not a warrior or a genius. He did not have great riches or power. He was, in fact, quite ordinary. Yet there was something about him that stood out, something that drew Valather's attention. Kai lived in a small house on the edge of the town with his family. He worked at a local farm, spending his days helping his parents and caring for the land that had been in their family for generations. His life was simple, but there was a strength in his simplicity. He had an unwavering love for his family and his home, a love that shone brightly even in the most ordinary of moments. Valather had seen this in Kai's heart, a love so pure and steadfast that it seemed to burn brighter than the stars themselves. This was the kind of love Valather wanted to test. Without a second thought, Valather stepped forward, his mind made up. He would confront Kai, and he would see if this human, this fragile, ordinary creature, could truly offer the answer to his question. Kai, unaware of the being watching him from the shadows, went about his evening routine. He helped his father with the chores around the house, making sure everything was in place for the night. The air was cool, and the stars twinkled brightly above. It was just another night in a simple, quiet life. Little did Kai know, his life was about to change forever. Velithor watched from the edge of the field, his eyes studying Kai as he moved about his home. It would be a simple task to destroy him, to erase him from existence without a second thought. But Velithor was not interested in destruction. Not yet. He wanted to understand. He wanted to know what made this human so different from the countless beings he had encountered. The time for testing had come. And so, Velithor moved closer, his footsteps silent, his presence barely a whisper on the wind. The night air was cool as Kai stood in his backyard, looking up at the stars. The world around him was quiet, too quiet, almost. His family had already gone to bed, and he was alone with his thoughts. It was moments like these that Kai appreciated most. The stillness of the night, the soft whisper of the wind through the trees, and the beauty of the distant stars twinkling like tiny diamonds in the sky. But tonight, something felt different. There was an odd sensation in the air, a strange energy that seemed to hum just beneath the surface. It was subtle, like a ripple in the air, something Kai couldn't quite place. He had lived in this small town his whole life, and never once had he felt anything like this before. Kai had always been a simple man. He didn't seek fame or power. His life was built around his family, his farm, and the quiet rhythm of daily work. His heart was full of love for his parents, his friends, and the land they worked. But there was a strength inside him, a deep well of loyalty and dedication to the people he cared about. And although he was not aware of it, there was a force growing within him, a force that was about to be tested in ways he never could have imagined. As he stood there, lost in thought, he suddenly felt a presence. It wasn't physical, like someone was standing behind him. It was more like a weight in the air, pressing in on him, making his heart beat a little faster. A shiver ran down his spine, and he turned around quickly, but the night was as still as it had been moments before. The presence grew stronger, and Kai felt a strange pull, an undeniable force guiding him to the edge of the field. He couldn't explain it, but something was calling him. The same strange energy that hummed in the air seemed to draw him forward, as if the universe itself was directing him. And then, standing in the shadow of the trees, he saw him. The figure was tall, too tall for any man Kai had ever seen. His clothes shimmered with a strange light, like they were made of stars themselves. The figure's eyes glowed with an otherworldly intensity, bright and piercing like two suns. There was something about him that was both terrifying and mesmerizing, as if he was a force of nature, a being beyond comprehension. Kai froze, his breath catching in his throat. The figure spoke, his voice deep and resonant, echoing in Kai's mind. "I have come for you, human." Kai's heart pounded. He took a step back, instinctively reaching for something, anything, to defend himself, but there was nothing within reach. Who are you?" he asked, his voice shaking slightly despite his best efforts to remain calm. The figure's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, it seemed as though the very air around them crackled with power. "I am Velithor," the figure said, his voice like thunder, "an immortal being. And you, human, are the one I have chosen." Kai's mind raced, but he struggled to understand. Immortal. He had never heard of anything like that. And why had this strange being chosen him? He was just a simple man, nothing special. He glanced around, hoping someone else would appear, someone who could explain all of this, but it was just him and this terrifying figure in the quiet night. Velithor stepped forward, his movement fluid and graceful, like he was walking through time itself. "You are the one," he said again, his voice almost soft now. "I have traveled across the stars, seen the rise and fall of countless worlds, and conquered every civilization I've encountered. But I have come to realize something I cannot ignore. There is a force in this universe, something powerful, something capable of breaking even the strongest of beings. Kai swallowed, trying to make sense of it all. And what's that? He asked cautiously. Love, Valithor said, the word rolling off his tongue like a forgotten concept. I have watched you, human. I have seen your love for your family, your love for your world. It is something I do not understand. But I believe it may be the answer to a question I have been asking for eons. Kai was still confused. What question? Valithor paused, looking up at the stars above them. His eyes seemed to reflect the vastness of the universe, as if he could see beyond the fabric of reality itself. How can an immortal being like me, one who has seen and done it all, be defeated? His voice dropped to a whisper. The answer, human, is you. Kai blinked, still trying to process what was happening. Was this a dream? Or was he really standing face to face with someone, or something, that claimed to be immortal? He couldn't make sense of it, but there was something about Valithor's presence that felt real. The air seemed to shimmer with power, and Kai could sense that whatever was happening was very real, no matter how impossible it seemed. Defeated by me. Kai repeated, still unsure of what Valithor meant. But I'm just an ordinary man. What can I possibly do against someone like you? Valithor's gaze softened, just for a moment. You may be ordinary, but there is something extraordinary in you, human. Something I want to understand. Love. Can it be a weapon? A force powerful enough to challenge me? His voice grew more intense. I have seen armies fall, planets burn. But love. I have never understood love. It is something I must know. And I believe you are the one who can show me. Kay's mind was spinning. What could he say to that? How could he possibly show this powerful, immortal being anything? He had no special abilities, no weapons, no way to defend himself. All he had was his love for his family, his friends, and the life he had built on Earth. Could love really be powerful enough to challenge someone like Valithor? Before he could respond, Valithor's eyes shone even brighter, as if he were reading his thoughts. Do not underestimate love, human. It may be the key to something even greater than you realize. Show me. Prove to me that love is more than just a fleeting emotion, and perhaps I will understand. Kai stood there, uncertain but determined. This was madness. And yet, something deep inside him stirred. He didn't know how, but he knew one thing for certain. He would not back down. The challenge was set. The sun had barely set when Kai stepped out of his house the next day. The strange events from the night before had left him restless, and he couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something big. He had barely slept, his mind constantly racing with thoughts of the powerful being who had appeared in his backyard. Valithor, an immortal who claimed to be older than time itself, had challenged him to prove that love could defeat him. Kai couldn't make sense of it. He was just an ordinary person. What could he possibly do to stop someone like that? He wasn't a fighter, and he certainly didn't have any special powers. What he did have, however, was a deep love for his family and his home. But was that enough to challenge someone who could erase entire worlds with a thought? Kai shook his head, trying to push away the doubts that clouded his mind. He couldn't afford to be afraid. His family needed him. His town needed him. And if Valithor was serious, then he had to find a way to face him. Just as he was lost in thought, a shadow fell over the land. The air around him grew colder, and the ground beneath his feet seemed to vibrate slightly. Kai looked up and saw a figure in the distance, a tall, dark shape against the horizon. His heart skipped a beat as he recognized the figure immediately. It was Valithor. Kai's legs froze, his breath catching in his throat. The last time he had seen Valithor, he had felt overwhelmed by the being's presence, as if the universe itself had bent to his will. Now, with the full weight of the challenge upon him, Kai felt his knees weaken. But he couldn't back down. Not now. Not ever. Valithor moved closer with a slow, deliberate pace, his steps quiet but full of power. The ground beneath him seemed to crack slightly with each footfall, and Kai could feel the force of his presence before he even spoke. "I see you are ready, human," Valithor said, his voice echoing through the air, carrying an authority that made Kai's skin crawl. "I have given you a chance to prove that love can be a weapon powerful enough to defeat me. I will not wait forever." Kai swallowed, trying to steady his racing heart. "What do you want me to do?" His voice was shaky, but he refused to let fear control him. He had to show Valithor that love wasn't something to be taken lightly. Valithor's eyes gleamed with a strange, almost eager intensity. "I want you to show me that love is more than just an emotion, that it can stand against me, against my power. You will fight me, human, but not with your strength, not with weapons or tactics. You will fight with what you hold most dear, the love you have for your family, for this world. Show me that love can be more than a weakness. Prove to me that it can be your strength." Kai felt a knot form in his stomach. How could love fight against someone who could obliterate anything in his path? He had never fought anyone before. He had no idea how to channel something as intangible as love into a battle. But then he remembered something. The way he felt when he thought about his family. The way his heart swelled with pride when he thought of his town, of all the people who made Earth home. That love wasn't weak. It was the very reason he kept going, the reason he woke up every day. With a deep breath, Kai stepped forward. "All right, I'll do it." Valithor nodded slowly, his eyes watching with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. "Then let us begin." Without another word, Valithor raised his hand, and in an instant, the world around them seemed to shift. The earth trembled as if something immense was about to happen, and the sky above darkened, swirling with an unnatural energy. Kai felt his body tense as he watched the dark clouds gather, feeling the weight in the air that pressed down on him. Then Valithor moved. With a speed that Kai could barely track, the immortal being lunged toward him. Kai barely had time to react. He raised his hands instinctively, as if trying to protect himself from the overwhelming force of Valithor's strike. But instead of hitting him directly, Valithor's blow seemed to send a shockwave through the ground, knocking Kai off his feet and sending him tumbling backward. Pain shot through his body, but Kai didn't have time to focus on it. He quickly scrambled to his feet, breathless, heart pounding. He could feel the weight of the challenge now, the immense pressure of facing someone who could erase him from existence with a single gesture. But he couldn't back down. Kai clenched his fists and focused, digging deep within himself to find that strength that had always been there, the love he felt for his family, his friends, and his world. This was his weapon. As Valithor approached again, Kai reached out with his heart, pouring all his emotions into one thought. "I will protect them." It wasn't about strength or power. It was about the people he loved, the community he was part of. He focused on that connection, the bond between them, and suddenly he felt something change within him. His chest tightened, but not from fear. This was different, stronger. The energy in the air seemed to respond, as if the very force of his emotions was starting to have an effect. Valithor paused mid-step. For the first time since the battle began, there was a flicker of something in his eyes, something he didn't expect. "What is this?" Kai's breath was steady now. He wasn't sure what had just happened, but he could feel it. Love was pushing back. It was as though the connection he had to those he cared for was becoming a force in its own right, something that could challenge even Valithor's immense power. He wasn't fighting with fists or fury. He was fighting with everything he held dear. "Is this your power, human?" Valithor asked, his voice almost contemplative. "This love?" Kai nodded, his voice steady. "Yes, this is what makes me strong. This is what I fight for." Valithor's expression shifted, the amusement in his eyes replaced by something else, a flicker of understanding, or perhaps something more. He raised a hand, and the battle paused for a moment as the two of them stood facing each other, one filled with power and invincibility, the other with the simple, unyielding force of love. It wasn't much yet, but it was enough. The tension in the air was palpable as Kai and Valather stood facing each other. The immortal being, towering and powerful, had been surprised by the force of Kai's love. It wasn't the physical strength of the human that had struck him. It was the raw, unyielding emotion that Kai had called upon. There was something in that love, something Valather hadn't expected, and it had briefly pushed him back. But now, as Valather surveyed Kai's determined face, the being knew that the time for games was over. This challenge was no longer just about testing the human's love. It was about seeing if love could truly be powerful enough to stand against him. Valather's eyes narrowed, and with a slight wave of his hand, the world around them began to shift. The sky darkened, the winds howled, and the ground beneath Kai's feet trembled as if the earth itself was responding to the immortal's power. Kai instinctively stepped back, his heart racing. He could feel the weight of Valather's presence growing even more intense. The challenge had escalated. "This will not be so easy, human," Valather's voice boomed, the sound echoing across the land. "Your love may be strong, but it will take more than that to challenge me. You will face your greatest fears, your deepest doubts. If you truly believe that love can defeat me, you must prove it." Kai's breath caught in his throat. What did Valather mean? Was he going to make Kai fight his own fears? He wasn't sure if he was ready for that kind of test, but there was no turning back now. Kai took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He focused on the love he felt for his family, the way he cared for them, the way they had always been there for him. That love was his anchor, and he wouldn't let it go. It was the only thing that had ever made him feel truly powerful, the only thing that had ever given him strength. He would use it now, no matter what Valather threw at him. Suddenly, Valather raised his hand again, and the world around them seemed to explode with energy. The ground cracked open, and the sky above was filled with swirling black clouds. Kai felt the air grow cold, and a deep, unsettling darkness began to close in around him. From the darkness, figures began to emerge. Familiar faces that made Kai's heart twist. His mother, his father, his friends, all of them appeared before him, their faces twisted in pain and fear. They were calling out to him, their voices echoing in his ears. "Save us, Kai. Please." The voices grew louder, more frantic. His family's faces began to distort, their eyes wide with terror. He could feel their pain, their fear, and it was overwhelming. The love he had for them was the only thing holding him together, but now it felt like a heavy weight, as if it was pulling him down into the darkness. "No," Kai whispered, shaking his head. "This isn't real." But the figures before him only continued to scream. "You can't save us, Kai. You're too weak. You'll never be enough." The weight of their words was like a hammer on his chest. Kai's heart pounded, his vision blurred with tears. Could he really protect them? Was he truly strong enough to face this darkness and save the people he loved? Doubt began to creep into his mind, and he felt himself faltering. Valather stood to the side, watching with a calm, almost detached expression. "You see, human," he said softly, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Love is not enough. Love makes you vulnerable. It ties you to others, and in doing so, it becomes a weakness. You cannot protect everyone. You cannot save them all. You must face this truth." Kai stumbled backward, his heart aching as he struggled to push away the overwhelming fear and doubt. But even as the darkness pressed in, something inside him refused to give up. He loved them, and that love was more than just a feeling. It was a part of who he was. His love for his family, his friends, his home, was not a weakness. It was his strength. "No," Kai said again, more firmly this time. "I won't let you take this from me." With that, Kai closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He thought of his family, his home, the people he loved. He remembered the moments of joy they had shared, the hard work they had put into building a life together. His love for them was not just about feeling. It was about action. It was about standing up when everything seemed impossible. And in that moment, Kay's love began to burn brighter, pushing back the darkness that surrounded him. The figures of his family began to fade, their twisted forms replaced with the images of the people he cherished, strong, smiling, and full of life. Their voices became clear again, not full of fear, but full of encouragement. "We believe in you, Kai." The darkness that had surrounded him shattered, and the air cleared. The oppressive weight lifted from his chest, and he stood tall, his heart strong once again. Velithor watched, a small flicker of something resembling respect in his eyes. "Impressive," he murmured. "You have pushed back the darkness. But this is only the beginning. Love may give you strength, but it will be tested again. I will show you the true power of doubt." Before Kai could react, the ground beneath him shifted once more. The air grew colder, and the sky darkened again. But this time, the challenge wasn't just about fear. It was something deeper, something more insidious. Velithor's voice rang out again. "Prepare yourself, human. This time, I will take you to the edge of despair. Let us see if your love is enough to pull you back." Kay's heart raced as he braced for what was to come. He knew this wasn't going to be easy. But if there was one thing he had learned, it was that love was not just a feeling. It was a force that had the power to overcome even the darkest of challenges. And he wasn't about to give up now. With renewed determination, Kai squared his shoulders, ready for whatever Velithor would throw at him next. His love would be his shield. It would be his strength, and it would guide him through the storm. The world around Kai was changing again. The sky was no longer dark with swirling clouds, but the air felt thick and heavy. Velithor's voice echoed in his ears, cold and powerful. "You think you have won, human, but you have not faced the true challenge yet." Kai took a deep breath, trying to steady his heart. His love had helped him push back the fear and the darkness before, but Velithor was right. This was only the beginning. He had faced his fears and doubts, but what more could Velithor do? What was worse than the nightmare images he had already seen? Then it hit him. It wasn't just the fear that could destroy him. It was the crushing weight of hopelessness. The feeling that no matter how hard he fought, no matter how much love he had, there would always be something just out of reach, something he couldn't protect. It was the feeling of being too small, too weak, against the vastness of the universe. The feeling that all his efforts would one day be in vain. The air around him shifted again. The land faded, and for a moment, Kai felt as though he was falling. His feet no longer touched the ground. The world seemed to disappear, and all he could hear was Velithor's voice, growing louder and louder. "Do you see now, human? You cannot win. Love is not enough. You will lose everything you hold dear. The universe will destroy you, just as it has destroyed countless others before you." Kay's heart pounded, the darkness swirling around him like a storm. He was falling into it, into that endless void of despair. It was a powerful feeling, a feeling that could consume him completely. He closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the universe pressing down on him. But even in that moment, there was a flicker of light inside him. His love, it had not left him. It was still there, even in the darkness. The love he had for his family, for his town, for the people he cared about. It was a love that refused to fade, no matter how deep the despair went. "I won't give up," Kai whispered, his voice shaking but strong. "I won't let you take this from me." Velithor's laugh rang out, bitter and cold. "You are fooling yourself, human. Love cannot protect you from the truth. All that you hold dear will be gone. And when it is gone, there will be nothing left for you to fight for." Kai felt the weight of his words, the crushing reality of what Velithor was saying. Was there really nothing left? What if love couldn't protect him? What if he lost everything? He felt the darkness closing in again, threatening to swallow him whole. But in that moment, he remembered something. Something his mother had once told him when he was a child. Love isn't about holding on to things. It's about the way you carry them with you, even when they're no longer here. It's about the strength you have in your heart to move forward. His mother's voice echoed in his mind, cutting through the darkness. Kai's love for his family wasn't about clinging to them or trying to stop the inevitable. It was about the strength to keep going, even when things seemed impossible. It was about the courage to face the world, no matter how many times he fell. Kai opened his eyes, his heart stronger than before. He wasn't going to let Valather win. He wasn't going to let the Immortal take away the power of love. His love was his strength, and it had brought him this far. The darkness began to recede, and Kai felt his feet touch the ground once again. He was standing in a field, a place that felt familiar. The wind blew gently through the trees, and the sun shone brightly in the sky. It was as though he had returned home, to a place where everything was possible. But Valather was still there, standing before him, watching with a mix of curiosity and amusement. "You persist," Valather said, his voice a low rumble. "But it will not be enough. You will reach the edge of despair again, and this time, there will be nothing to save you." Kai shook his head, standing tall. "I've already faced despair, and I've learned that love isn't just something that protects you. It's something that gives you the strength to keep moving forward, even when it feels like everything is lost. It's something you carry with you, always." Valather's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something, perhaps a hint of respect. He had expected Kai to crumble under the weight of his challenges. But Kai had not only survived, he had learned, grown stronger with each test. "You are a strange one, human," Valather said, his tone shifting slightly. "I expected you to break. But instead, you are becoming something more. Perhaps love does have power after all." Kai smiled, though it was a weary smile. He had learned something important in the last few moments. Love was not just a shield or a weapon. It was a force that could overcome anything, as long as you didn't let go of it. It could turn the darkest moments into the brightest, as long as you held on to it with everything you had. "I'm not giving up," Kai said firmly, his voice steady. "As long as there is love in this world, I will keep fighting. I won't let you destroy it." Valather's gaze softened, if only for a moment. "You are more resilient than I gave you credit for, but you will face more challenges, and love will be tested again. Let us see how long it can stand against me." With a snap of his fingers, the world around them shifted again, and the challenge was far from over. But Kai was ready. He had faced his deepest fears, his doubts, and even the crushing weight of despair. And through it all, he had learned that love was not something that could be taken away. It was something that lived within him, and it would continue to give him strength, no matter how many times it was tested. The air was heavy with anticipation. Kai could feel his heart beating steadily, his mind focused and clear. But Valather was not finished with him yet. The immortal being had put him through every test imaginable: fear, doubt, and despair. Now, Kai had reached a point where he could no longer feel overwhelmed. The power of his love had grown, and with each test, he had come to understand it more deeply. But Valather was still there, standing tall and confident, a figure of near-infinite power. His eyes locked onto Kai's, and his voice rang out, as cold and sharp as ever. "You have done well, human. You have proven that love can give you strength. But now, I will test something different." Kai felt a chill run down his spine. What more could Valather do? What was this final test that would determine if love could truly defeat him? Valather raised one hand, and in an instant, the world around them began to shift. The bright sun faded, and the earth cracked open beneath their feet. The sky turned a deep shade of red, casting an eerie glow over everything. Kai stood his ground, his body tense, ready for whatever challenge was coming next. "This final test will not be about fear," Valather continued, his voice low and menacing. "Nor will it be about doubt or despair. This test will be about something even more difficult. It will be about sacrifice." Kai's stomach twisted. Sacrifice. What did that mean? The idea of sacrificing something for the greater good was not unfamiliar to him. But what was Valather asking him to give up? His family, his love. True love, human, is not just about receiving. It is about giving. Are you willing to sacrifice the very thing that gives you strength? Are you willing to give up the one thing that you love the most? Valather's eyes gleamed with dark amusement. Kai's mind raced. What was Valather asking? He had already given so much to protect his loved ones. He had faced fears, darkness, and despair, but now the Immortal was asking him to give up the very thing that had kept him going. His love. No, Kai said, his voice firm. I won't give up my love. Not for you, not for anyone. Valather's expression remained unchanged, but there was a slight movement in his eyes, as if Kai's answer had surprised him. Very well, the Immortal said. Then I will give you a choice. You can keep your love, but you will lose everything else. Your family, your home, your future. They will all vanish, lost to time. You will be left alone, with only the memory of what could have been. Or you can give up your love, and all will be restored. Everything you care about will return to you. Kai's breath caught in his throat. The choice before him was impossible. He couldn't even begin to imagine life without the love he held for his family and friends. That love was everything to him. It was what had kept him alive, what had made him strong. But the thought of losing everything else, could he really make that sacrifice? I won't give up my love, Kai said again, this time with even more certainty in his voice. My love is not just a part of me. It is who I am. Without it, I would be nothing. I could never live in a world where I didn't have love in my heart. Valather's face twisted into a sly smile. So be it, he said, raising his hand. The world around them shifted again, and suddenly, everything Kai had known, his family, his home, his future, began to fade away. His parents' faces disappeared, replaced by a void. The people he had known his entire life were gone, their memories slowly dissolving into nothingness. Kai stood frozen in place, watching in horror as everything he had fought for slipped through his fingers. His heart ached with the loss. How could he bear to live in a world where he had nothing left? How could he keep fighting when everything that had ever mattered was gone? But even in that moment of despair, Kai felt something deep within him stir. His love wasn't gone. It was still there, burning brightly in his chest. No matter how much Valather tried to take away from him, Kai knew one thing was certain. Love couldn't be erased. It couldn't be stolen or destroyed. Kai stepped forward, his eyes focused on Valather, the Immortal standing in front of him. You may take everything, he said, his voice steady. But you can never take my love. It will always be a part of me, and it will always give me the strength to keep going. Valather's expression shifted slightly, his eyes narrowing as if Kai's words had struck a nerve. For the first time, there was no amusement in the Immortal's gaze, only a flicker of something else, something close to doubt. You are truly a strange human, Valather said quietly. Most would have chosen differently. Most would have given up their love to regain what they lost. But you, he paused, as though considering something. You refuse to let go. You will keep fighting, no matter the cost. Kai nodded, his heart strong. I won't stop fighting. Love is not something I can lose. It is what makes me who I am. Valather stared at him for a long moment, the silence stretching between them. And then, slowly, the Immortal's form began to fade, his power slowly dissipating. You are the first to ever resist me like this, human, Valather said, his voice growing faint. Perhaps there is something to your love after all. You have won. For now. And with that, the Immortal disappeared, leaving Kai standing alone in the stillness. The world around him slowly began to return to normal. The sky cleared, the sun rose, and the sounds of life returned. But something had changed in Kai. He had passed the final test, and he had learned that no matter what was taken from him, love was something that would never be lost. He had won not just the battle, but the war, and it was his love, the strength of his heart that had carried him through. The world around Kai slowly settled back into its familiar rhythm. The sky above was once again a peaceful blue, and the air carried the soft scent of wildflowers. The chaos, the fear, and the trials he had faced all seemed to fade away like a bad dream, leaving him standing alone in the quiet calm. For a brief moment, it was as though nothing had ever happened. The world felt untouched by the battle he had fought. But in his heart, he knew that everything had changed. He had faced the unimaginable, confronted the deepest fears and doubts, and emerged victorious. The power of love had carried him through. And now, as the sun set and painted the sky with shades of orange and pink, Kai felt a sense of peace he had never known before. Yet he was not alone. He could feel it, the presence of someone behind him. He turned around slowly, his eyes locking with the figure that had haunted his every step. Valithar, the immortal being who had tested him in ways he never thought possible, stood before him once again. But this time, something was different. There was no anger in Valithar's eyes, no malice. Only curiosity. "You have done what no one has ever done before," Valithar said, his voice no longer cold but quieter, more reflective. "You have faced every test I set before you and refused to break. Even when I offered you the world in exchange for your love, you chose to keep it. You are the first to resist me like this." Kai stood tall, his heart steady. "I told you," he said quietly, "love is not something I can lose. It's a part of me. It's what gives me strength." Valithar's gaze softened, as if he was seeing Kai in a new light. "I didn't understand it before. I thought love was just a fleeting emotion, something that could be taken away with time. But now, I see it differently. I see how it has changed you, how it has made you stronger than I ever imagined." Kai took a step forward, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Love isn't just about receiving or taking. It's about the strength to keep going, even when it feels impossible. It's about the people you care about, the ones who give you purpose. And when you have that love, you can face anything." For the first time, Valithar seemed to hesitate. His powerful form, once filled with an aura of unbeatable strength, now seemed smaller, almost vulnerable. "I have lived for eons, Kai. I have seen entire civilizations fall. I have witnessed countless battles, wars, and the rise and fall of empires. But never have I seen a force as powerful as love. It is not something that can be destroyed." Kai could hardly believe his ears. The immortal who had spent so much time trying to break him, to force him to give up his love, was now acknowledging its power. "I told you, love is not a weakness. It's the strongest force there is." Valithar's expression was unreadable, but there was a shift in his demeanor. Perhaps I was wrong. I believed that love was just a fleeting thing, that it could be used to manipulate others. But now I see that it's more than that. It is a force that binds people together, that gives them the strength to fight, to survive. Kai nodded, his heart full. He could feel it now, the weight of everything he had fought for, and the deep truth that love was not just a feeling, but a power that could shape the course of the universe. It's not just about survival, though. Love makes us want to make the world better. It makes us want to protect the people we care about, to build a future for them. That's what gives us hope. Valithar's eyes seemed to soften further, his gaze drifting to the horizon, where the sun was beginning to dip below the mountains. "I have spent so long searching for something greater than power. I thought I could find it through domination, through fear. But now I realize that what I've been searching for is something far simpler." There was a long silence between them, as Kai waited for Valithar to continue. He could feel the weight of the moment, the gravity of everything that had led to this point. Finally, Valithar spoke again, his voice quiet and almost hesitant. "You have shown me that there is more to life than strength. That love, human love, is the greatest power in the universe. I cannot deny it any longer." Kai looked at him, his heart full of gratitude. "It's not just about love for one person. It's about love for all people, for the world we live in. It's about wanting to make things better, even when it seems impossible. Valithar stood in silence, contemplating Kai's words. Finally, he stepped back, a rare look of respect in his eyes. You have won, Kai. Not by defeating me, but by proving that love is a force that cannot be defeated. It has conquered me in a way that nothing else ever could. I will leave you now, to live your life as you see fit. But remember, human, never let go of that love. And with those final words, Valithar began to fade, his form dissolving into the air like a wisp of smoke. Kai stood still, watching as the Immortal disappeared, leaving nothing behind but the faintest echo of his presence. The world was still. The sun continued to set, casting its warm glow across the land. Kai took a deep breath, feeling the peace that had settled in his heart. The battle was over. He had won, not just because of his strength, but because of the love he held inside him. The love that had carried him through every trial, every test, and had led him to victory. In the end, Kai knew the truth. It wasn't power that made someone truly strong. It wasn't weapons or strength that determined who would win. It was love. Love was the greatest force of all. And with it, anything was possible. Kai turned toward the horizon, ready to face the future with a heart full of love and the knowledge that, no matter what came next, he was never truly alone.